It's been a while since I've made a video, and it's about time for me to take the initiative to do so. If you have seen the activity on the net lately, you're probably familiar with my YouTube channel, Charger Mopar, which has not been active for a while, other than a few videos that I put on there just to fill the time. I have been mostly interested in antique cars, fixing things, building things, fabrication, and so on. But in the recent months, I've actually become aware of something that I didn't even know was a thing, and that is the carnivore diet. Now, I've seen several people on YouTube promoting this diet as a way of increasing health and vitality and of all the benefits that it has. And it's ironic because I've been practicing this diet since I was a teenager at the age of 15 years old. I am now 54. So for all these years, save for a 7-month vegetarian experiment, I've been eating basically meat, eggs, and some dairy, along with the occasional fruit and very occasional vegetable. Now, I have been criticized for most of my life, namely from my parents and from other people I knew, that told me that this diet would kill me. And I remember very well the Time magazine article that came out in 1984, which had the frowning bacon and eggs on it. And it showed a plate with the 2 eggs and the bacon shaped like if it was frowning. And when I saw that, it did the opposite of what it should have done. It should have made me, oh, I don't want to eat this anymore. I need to go and eat the healthy whole grains, the vegetables, and so on. But that first year that I was eating this way, what had happened was I went from being one of the shortest kids in junior high to getting close to average height in high school. And I felt really good. My whole attitude had changed. So I thought, well, if this diet is so deadly, I'm just going to take a chance. I feel good, and I'm happy. And I didn't feel frustrated anymore. So I ended up calling it the heart attack diet, which was what I tell everyone. So if they invited me to go and eat somewhere, I'd say, well, okay, I'd like to have a steak or at least a hamburger. And anytime that they had meat with other foods in it, I would simply get rid of what I didn't want to eat, such as the bread, pasta, and so on. I'd either give it to somebody else, or if they insisted that I had it, I would simply put it in a plastic bag, and then when I saw the first group of ducks around, I'd feed it to them. And of course, that was another thing I was known for, as the kid that likes ducks. Because anytime there was something I didn't want to eat, I just gave it to the ducks. Now, over time, this became sort of a way of life. And my parents eventually adapted to the diet. And I think the main reason they adapted to the diet is when they saw how much I grew. Again, I went from being one of the shortest kids in 10th grade to being the second tallest in 12th grade. It was really amazing. And throughout this whole time, I never had any growing pains, and I never got acne or any of the other problems that many teenage kids had. So it turned out to be a great way of life, and I continue to eat this way. Now, when we had Hurricane Andrew, which was in 1992, I had more meat than I ever had in my life. It was not down to, well, what can I afford? It's down to, well, our power is off, and we have to get rid of this food before it goes bad. So maybe you can eat it or give it to your ducks. So I stuffed myself with some of the best cuts of beef and seafood and even poultry. I had my freezer, which we had here, which was one of those rich plan upright freezers. We stuffed it with meat. We stuffed it in our old refrigerator and just kept eating meat. Now, even my parents, my dad was eating a lot of meat. My mother, she never liked meat that much. But what ended up happening is that I got into the habit of eating quality meats. But then, towards the end of the year, as the meat was starting to run out, I had a lot of people that I know tell me that this was extremely unhealthy and that it was going to lead to serious health effects, that I need to add some vegetables to my diet. And there were other reasons as well, which I'll get into at another time. Well, I made a plan, and I said at the beginning of 1993, I was going to go vegetarian for as long as I could. And that's what I did. I did not eat any meat. I had eaten up pretty much what was left. There were a few scraps. I gave it to the ducks. And I went ahead and I started to eat vegetables and vegetable-based foods. Now, I was never a big fan of bread or pasta. So I had to force myself to try to eat that stuff. And the only reason I ate it is because simply eating vegetables and raw fruits wasn't enough to make me feel satisfied. No matter how much I ate, it was just a constant hunger. So I started adding things like pasta. And the only way I could eat pasta was to put a lot of cheese on it. I had to put a lot of the Romano cheese. But if I was vegetarian, that was kind of a no-no. But I used it anyway. So even though I went vegetarian, I did continue to eat some dairy. And eventually, I had to start eating eggs again because I had no energy and I started to get headaches. And I can understand why people would consider migraine headaches to be so debilitating. Usually on the weekend, when I was wanting to do something, I would get up in the morning, have this terrible headache. It was usually right here behind the eyes, and I felt bad. Then I noticed over time my energy levels went down. And then I started to become apprehensive about anything. Anytime that I had to do something new, I was worried. Oh, is this going to fail or is that going to fail? So there were a lot of things that happened to me. And eventually it got to be limiting. I was not getting as much done. But then in July of 93, I picked up the flu. And for the first time in my life, it knocked me down. I couldn't eat anything. I was throwing up, felt terrible. And I just could not force myself to eat. Well, it took about 2 weeks before I finally got to the point where I could actually walk around. I had lost a lot of weight. I was very weak and thin, feeling terrible. I thought, I got to do something about this. And both of my parents were sick as well. So I was the one that was going to have to go to the store to get groceries. And I remember the first time that I went outside, I opened the door and I saw a duck wagging its tail at me. So I looked around, I saw some feathers, and I walked to the right-hand side of the door, and I looked under the lawn chair, and there was a nest, a duck nest, with 3 eggs in it. So I thought to myself, well, I've eaten these before. Let me go ahead and pick up the eggs and eat them. And that's what I did. And within 10-15 minutes, I started to feel better. And after that, I decided that the vegetarian diet was over. I was going to go back to eating meat and eggs and all the animal products that I wanted. Now, I still ate some plant foods. Occasionally, I'd eat fruit. One of my favorite fruits is plantains, which are a type of banana. But they're more like a potato than a banana because when you cook them, they have a very similar taste. So occasionally, that's what I would eat. But after that date, and I don't know the exact date, but it was at the end of July, I decided that it was time to go back to animal-based eating. And I've continued that diet to this day. The only thing that I've had other than animal-based is the occasional fruit. Sometimes I will use lemons and limes from the yard, sometimes citrus fruit like oranges, or the sour oranges for marinating meat, and of course the occasional banana, although I haven't eaten a ripe banana in quite a while. But I do like the green bananas that I have outside, cooked plantains or cooked. And that's been it. So since 1993, I have been on a complete animal-based diet. And before that, from 1983 to January 1983, I was on a meat-based diet. And I felt that it's one of the best things that I ever did. Of all the other things that I've tried, the businesses that I've started, the things that I've done, built, invented things, and so on, I think that the diet is the one thing that really had the biggest impact on me. And it was frustrating, too, because my parents never really came around to this way of eating. My dad, he was more into the whole grains and superfoods concept. My mother, she would eat pretty much whatever she wanted, although she did try to take her supplements and she did eat the vegetables. but she always hated red meat, and trying to get her to eat even a hamburger was difficult unless it had a bun on it and other things in it. She would never eat a steak, and definitely not liver. But my parents, they eventually got old and died in their 80s. So it was a little bit sad. But again, after my mom passed away and I was infected with the flu, the one that was out in 2020, I had a few difficult moments, but I just went right back, continued to eat the way that I always have, got better, and since then have actually felt better than ever. So despite the hardships that I had to deal with, in the end, I think it was all worth it. And to this day, I am very happy that I've continued this diet. Now, in this year, 2022, was the first time that I've actually put myself out there. I was approached by Joey, the Carnivore Camaraderie, who was very interested in my story, so we went ahead and did that video conference, and I was very surprised by how much attention it got. And now I've gotten to the point where it's sort of reawakened my interest in getting back on YouTube and explaining some of the things that I've done, some of the things that I do, and my outlook on life. Because I think that there are other people out there who might benefit. And if they can, that would be great. I would be happy to share the experience I've had and maybe some of the happiness that I've gotten from this way of life. So I look forward to being able to make more videos and communicate with more of you. Till then.